In this video, I'm going to go through some of the basics of interior odor investigations. Not a terribly common call, but at the same time, not really that uncommon. And best part about this is there's a lot of different potential causes that are worth investigating while we get called to a strange odor, smell of smoke, who knows what's going on in the house kind of call. So first we're going to look at typical causes of interior odors. Broadly broken out, there's fires, chemicals of some sort, and then other. Then we're going to talk about how we investigate these interior odors, what steps make sense, what tools I'd recommend you bring, and then going through how we actually mitigate the hazards that we find that are present. Obviously, a brief introduction to the hazards. There's a lot more we can talk about with each specific hazard and when you find a fire, how do you fight a fire? We're not going to go into that much detail. First and foremost, critical disclaimer, follow your own policies, SOPs, SOGs, as well as the appropriate laws and regulations. This doesn't supersede those. Use your best judgment. It's all on you to make the right choice on scene. I'm just here to see about helping you out, giving you some good information. So let's talk through causes. Our potential causes are broadly broken out into fires, with both kind of smoldering fires and then hot electrical equipment. Then looking at chemicals, mostly cleaning chemicals, and then you can have inadvertent mixes of chemicals that come together. Then we'll look at natural gas and propane, the flammable gas group of generally chemicals, sewage gases, and then we'll kind of briefly talk about what if it's not any of those things. So fire-related odors. We all generally know the various smells of smoke that are out there. You know what wood smoke smells like, you know what grass and pine needles smell like and how different those two are. So we generally have a good idea what we're smelling when there's a smell of smoke. So spending some time talking to the reporting party, etc., we can get some information to help make this distinction. So looking at our causes for fire-related smells or smoke-y kind of smells, these potential fires. Smoldering fires are kind of the more serious option. This is where there's a fire concealed in behind the walls, happening in the rafters, or some kind of a space that's not immediately apparent. There's not a lot of smoke being produced. You just smell it, just a little bit of the smoke, a little bit of that wood smoke going on in the air. Obviously not correlated to a wood stove, not correlated to a campfire or anything like that. Any of that wood smoke smell is really concerning and something to take action on. Second, there's electrical fires. This is going to be, not necessarily an electrical fire. It's that broad group of the hot electrical equipment that smells kind of funny. I think we've all smelled what a hot wire smells like, that strange chemical but smoky, weird mix that you get. That's what we'll smell. And generally, the reporting party can give you this kind of information. It's like, what does it smell like? Yeah, it smells kind of like maybe electrical. Okay, cool. Fantastic. That'll help us guide that investigation. Any of these fire-related odors, any interior smell of smoke, we need to investigate diligently because there's that risk that there's a concealed fire that could become a structure fire. So take effort, go after those, do what you can to find that source, and don't give up until you've really exhausted every possible opportunity to track it down. Looking at chemical-related odors, first group there is our regular kind of cleaning chemicals. You use bleach to take care of decontaminating stuff. We use petroleum solvents for any number of things, be it cleaning parts in the garage, cleaning firearms parts, things like that. We'll get those petroleum solvents that are potentially found in someone's house. We can also see ketones. This is going to be acetone and other things like that. That will be, nail polish remover, things like that. What we'll see or what we'll smell with that group, bleach is pretty obvious. We kind of know what that smells like. Same with ammonia, window cleaners, things like that. We're somewhat familiar with that smell. We've all probably smelled the petroleum solvents as well. Ketones, they're kind of like those petroleum solvents, but maybe a little sweeter, a little strange in that sweet direction. We also could see pool or hot tub chemicals. some kind of chlorine derivatives or things like that, where it'll have that vaguely chlorine-y pool hot tub smell. That'll be something to notice and pay attention to as you proceed through your investigation as a potential cause. There's also pesticides. These will be kind of more of a just nasty organophosphate, kind of not friendly smell. But I think we've all smelled some pesticides here and there, inadvertently, of course. Big thing is we're looking at a lower overall risk with these chemical-related odors, but they're still worth investigating and kind of diving into. Generally, we'll just ventilate the structure, and that does a good job taking care of that, assuming that the chemical isn't continuing to create a hazard inside of the house. There's also the potential that someone inadvertently mixed a couple of chemicals together. This is a common theme to see in the media, common theme to see kind of every so often from various governmental groups reminding everyone that this is dangerous. There's a few different varieties of things that can be mixed together and create nasty stuff. Generally, it's things relating to bleach, as well as basically any other acids and bases that you're mixing together can create some pretty nasty mixes. So vinegar, or really any other acid plus bleach, will give you a chlorine gas or maybe a derivative of chlorine, something like that. Pretty nasty. You can actually get pretty seriously injured if you inadvertently mix these in a tight space. Take a deep breath in. You can actually see patients with respiratory complaints as a result of that. If you mix something that's ammonia-based with a bleach-containing chemical, you'll get chloramine gas, which is basically a form of chlorine. Still the same kind of risks. If you want to get into the details, bust out your NIOSH guide, take a look at Wiser. If you mix alcohols with bleach, it'll create chloroform as well as another suite of other kind of nasty gases that you're going to want to stay out of. All of these can happen inadvertently in small quantities with someone, you wipe a window with, or you wipe something with a wipe that may contain some bleach, and then you spray a window cleaner on the mirror above where you just wiped, and there's some overspray, and maybe it'll react a bit. You get a strange smell. That's one way to do it. If you inadvertently mix a lot more because you're trying to make a more powerful cleaning chemical, then we have a real risk and we got something to take action on. There's also the risk of mixing vinegar or other acids with hydrogen peroxide. Those will give you a strong acid that can be a gas. Specifically, vinegar plus hydrogen peroxide gives you peracetic acid. I don't remember the exact issue with that, but it's pretty nasty. The big risk here is inhalation, but often it's not a lot that's produced. So our actions here and our risk here is more focused on patient care and then eventually taking care of ventilating the structure, making sure that that hazard doesn't persist. Then the other big group of interior odors to be worried about are natural gas and propane. Any of these flammable gases that are getting piped into our houses for the purpose of cooking, heating, things like that. The good thing is they're typically odorized. Any of the propane that's being delivered to residences or any of the natural gas that is being delivered commercially, it's all going to have this smell of rotten cabbage, as the gas companies like to describe it, mixed in. It's a chemical called methyl mercaptan. It smells pretty foul and it smells pretty distinct. Not actually like rotten cabbage, not actually like rotten eggs. It's kind of a weird mix of the rotten eggs plus some other stuff. I think generally we've all smelled this at least once or twice. We have a vague idea of how significant and powerful that smell is. So with these gas leaks, they could be localized to an appliance. Maybe a pilot light got blown out on a heater or on a stove. That's not super common. Many residents will take care of that, but it's a potential source. The big thing is it may start localized, but it can be a whole house kind of problem really quickly, and it's a really significant problem. Gases will spread based on their weight and temperature. Propane is heavier, so it'll sink down to the lower levels of the structure. Natural gas, which is principally methane, will rise to the higher levels of the structure. So you can expect a little bit of a breakdown in how the gases distribute. especially if it's kind of cooler and it's taking time for stuff to move or sink. Normal day, lots of people moving around, it's probably going to be throughout the whole house. Big thing is it's a significant risk from fire and explosion. Any inadvertent operation of a switch, anything that creates a spark, you can generate an explosion pretty easily and cause some serious damage to both yourself and the structure. The good thing is most dispatching groups, agencies, they know that this will be paged out as a gas leak instead of a random interior odor. This is good. We all walk in knowing that this is more of a gas leak kind of incident. Often the gas company will get notified at the same time. We take action on that assumption as opposed to we don't know what the smell is, so we got to go kind of the universe of alternatives. Last but not least, there's also the potential for sewage to create problems for us from an interior odor investigation perspective. The big cause generally is going to be the U-trap in a toilet or a sink. If you take a look underneath of any sink, you take a look at the side of a toilet, you will see a U that the pipe forms almost like a half W kind of structure. What that does is it holds a layer of water in that space, and this prevents the gases that exist in the sewers or in septic tanks or anything like that from coming back up and into the house. Gases are generally lighter than solids and liquids, so they'll come back up unless there's that level of water hanging out in there providing this barrier. There's also the potential that someone could have a leaking or broken sewer line. Those tend to be a little more obvious and people figure that out at some point. But this is a very common cause of that kind of rotten egg, but actually rotten egg smell because it's going to be a lot of hydrogen sulfide, or at least they'll smell the hydrogen sulfide that comes out. Hydrogen sulfide truly has that rotten egg smell. You get it at a part per billion or a few parts per billion. It starts to be hazardous in the parts per million range. So we'll notice it, or the residents will notice it, and they'll call fire department for this interior odor investigation. Generally low risk, easy to fix, but a good one to know about and be able to investigate. So how do we respond to that interior odor investigation call? While we're en route, try and collect as much information as possible from the dispatcher. What is it? Do they know what it smells like? Did someone say, oh, it smells like rotten eggs? It's like, no, we're sure it's rotten eggs, not natural gas. Are there any alarms going off? Do they have their carbon monoxide detector going off? Smoke alarm going off? Any of those sorts of things? Are we going to change this from to interior odor investigation? Wait a minute, they've got a smoke alarm going off. Let's treat this more like a fire. If they don't have any alarms going off, we can ask, are there any sick persons? Does anyone have any complaints? Did someone get a lung full of it and they're having a medical issue? We got to figure that out. Make sure that you have required equipment that makes sense for this type of call. You should be rolling with full structural PPE, that is with your SCBA mask, everything like that ready to go. Have a 4-gas meter. Start it up while you're leaving the station so it has time to warm up and get zeroed. You can zero it at the scene, that's fine too. Make sure you do so away from anyone's breathing or away from the truck's exhaust. Consider, or really try to make sure you have a thermal imaging camera as well. This is going to be how you try and locate those concealed fires, hot electrical equipment, things like that. That TIC is going to be a useful bit of gear that you should try and take with you at all costs. Think about other resources that you could need while you're en route. Are we getting information that directs this one way or another? Is there a huge amount of chemicals at risk? Is this a commercial structure with an odor? If it's something like that, consider getting hazmat on standby or getting those resources moving towards you should you find that it's more serious than was initially anticipated. When you arrive on scene, do your standard proper size up, single-story residential structure, nothing showing on 3 sides. Be out investigating. Go do a full 360. They smelled smoke on one side. Maybe there's smoke pouring out of the basement that they didn't notice and that you were able to find when you do your 360. Go talk to that reporting party. Who called? Why did you call 911 today? What do you smell? Where do you smell it? And more so, what does it smell like? Do your best describing it. Is it anything that you have smelled before? Does it smell like smoke? Does it smell like natural gas? Does it smell like weird chemicals? Were you cleaning and did you end up smelling it while you were cleaning? Ask these questions. Do your best to get as much information as you can before you start the investigation. Then develop a plan of attack. Is it related to natural gas or propane? That should take you down one route, kind of the gas leak route. Do they have alarms inside the structure going off? Carbon monoxide, smoke, anything like that. That's another route to follow. And then everything else will kind of go a different route than those two and proceed with the investigation. So first case, natural gas or propane smell. They're getting that odorant. Maybe they have a combustible gas detector inside their house and it's going off, which some people do. Make entry with full PPE, including SCBA. You want the SCBA on air, no nonsense. Go in assuming the house is full of natural gas. You can make an entry with a team of 2, have 2 outside, treat it like an IDLH entry. Be ready for this to be a serious incident very quickly. Use your 4-gas meter to search the structure looking for increasing concentrations of that percent LEL that shows up on there. That's going to be your real tool to track this down. Look near heaters, stoves, water heaters. Most common cause here could be a unlit pilot light or an extinguished pilot light. Things like that. Could also be a leak from a pipe or something like that. See if you can track that down as best as you can. Locate that leak. Don't operate any light switches, appliances, electrical equipment, anything at all, unless you brought it in with you and you are sure it's intrinsically safe. It should be printed clearly on whatever bit of gear you're using, whether or not it is. Cell phone is not intrinsically safe. Your portable radio probably is. The flashlight on your coat probably is. Make sure that whatever you're using is safe in that potentially explosive atmosphere. You got a carbon monoxide or smoke alarm sounding. We're going to investigate that basically using the same tactics, but instead we're looking for smoke and fire and bringing that thermal imaging camera in with us to help with that investigation. Full PPE, SCBA on air, going that whole 9 yards. Make entry with a team of 2 with 2 outside. Look for obvious signs of smoke or fire, any weird staining on the walls, any actual visible light haze, any smoke like that. Where is the carbon monoxide alarm that's going off? Is it going off or is it a low battery? And use your 4-gas meter to validate any of those carbon monoxide findings. Looking for increasing carbon monoxide, it's actually going to be in parts per million, not percent. And then you're looking for potentially any decrease in oxygen. Could be just venting out of the structure, okay, but that decrease in oxygen is diagnostic. Look near heaters, water heaters, things like that. Those are common sources for carbon monoxide. Then broaden that search out. Use that thermal imaging camera to look for weird hotspots that could be that concealed fire that we're concerned about. So then we'll talk about everything else. Those previous 2 were the ones that are the biggest danger, where we want to be on SCBA and be prepared for it to be a hazardous environment at that exact moment that we make entry. If it's not those, we want to investigate assuming that it could become hazardous, but at the same time, we're going to still need our sense of smell. I know it's a common statement in hazmat books and in basic training. We don't use our sense of smell to detect hazardous materials. We all know that's not true, and that's how this call came to us. Someone detected a smell on their own. Just by smelling it, it wasn't one of the meters that went off. So we're going to investigate looking for that smell and kind of figuring it out. So when you make entry, structure gear, carrying the SCBA with the mask, ready to go for that quick dawn if we need to. Have that thermal imaging camera, 4-gas meter, take a water can, and take a set of irons with you. Who knows what you'll find? With any luck, it's just going to be a hot surge protector or something like that that you can unplug and life is good. Or it's a sewage issue and you just run some water and life is good. But we should be prepared to find a concealed fire. Consider preparing a hose line outside, especially if it was reported as a sense of smoke and it was pretty strong. Get an attic ladder ready, get these sorts of things ready to do a deep dive into the structure to look for concealed fire. Make entry with a team of 2, everyone else stays outside, then you're going to investigate. Heaters, bathrooms, appliances, things like that. What was the odor reported? Where does it make sense to look? Were they cleaning the bathroom and they smelled something in the bathroom? Well, slowly approach the bathroom and see if you smell anything. And proceed kind of in the logical way that makes sense that way. Be prepared to back out. Starts to be a strong smell, anything that's really hazardous. Your 4-gas meter goes off on any of the alarm parameters. Back out, call in reinforcements, don SCBAs, and investigate a little bit more aggressively. So let's talk mitigation efforts, how we can do something about these hazards once we find them. Natural gas and propane. First and foremost, let's locate that source as best as we can, if you can do so safely. We start to encounter LEL at that second alarm limit, where we're being concerned that we're at 40% of that lower explosive limit or higher. At that point, we should consider just doing an external shutoff for the structure and not try and investigate deeper, because the odds of us encountering an explosive atmosphere get higher. So shut off whatever it is that's leaking. You got a small source, you got a little bit of natural gas coming out of a stove that doesn't have a pilot light lit, something like that. We should have a local shutoff on that appliance. Shut that off and see if that takes care of the source. Obviously relying on your 4-gas to see if that's working, because you should be on air. If not, we can't find a local shutoff, it's not coming from an appliance that has a local shutoff, anything like that, shut it off at the supply. This is either at the meter or you go to the propane tank and operate the valve at the top of it and shut that gas supply off. Then we ventilate. Do your best to try and ventilate from the strongest area straight outside if you can. Otherwise, opening doors and windows and potentially putting some fans on to push fresh air into the structure and get that percent LDL down. Carbon monoxide is relatively similar. We're going to locate that source again using the 4-gas meter, see what we can do. First, is it an appliance? If it is that appliance that's producing carbon monoxide in a strange quantity, shut it off, shut the gas off, shut that appliance off, have the resident call a plumber, someone qualified to take care of HVAC systems, because that's a problem. That appliance shouldn't be doing that. If it's not an appliance, we've got carbon monoxide that we have no idea where it's coming from, or none of the appliances are producing it, then we're going to rely on that thermal camera to look for concealed fire. So diligently look at all the walls, the areas where there's the highest concentration of that carbon monoxide. Look for any area that's heated and consider even poking some holes in the wall to look for a source, potential concealed fire inside the structure. Then finally, we're going to ventilate that once we locate the source or once we take action to mitigate that source. Open doors, open windows, maybe a fan. Do the best you can to get that CO out of the structure. Smoldering fire, so smell of smoke, wood, kind of, those regular, ordinary combustibles kind of smoke. Use that thermal camera to try and locate those extents as best as you can. With any luck, it's just a heater, something small that you can shut off. If not, we're going to think about opening up the wall, use your irons, things like that to find that extension. Where is this going? Consider masking up immediately as soon as you really locate a hot spot, because there's the potential that as you open that up, it turns into a real fire. Consider charging a line at the door and being ready to treat this as a structure fire should that flare up once we open the wall. Think that ventilation control. This fire was ventilation controlled. We add oxygen now, it could become fuel controlled. Attempt extinguishment with that water can that you brought in first. Generally, it's the easy way to go. Hey, there's a little tiny something got going. So you hit it with the water can, that takes care of it, and we're good. Otherwise, we'll make attack with the hose line. It's a structure fire at that point. For an electrical kind of issue, that electrical smell, same initial step. Use that thermal camera to investigate where's the hot thing. in the room with the strongest smell? Is it a hot outlet? Is it a hot appliance? A hot, transformer that's supplying a television? Something like that. Try and find the hottest individual thing, and then consider either if we have to shut the breaker off to that room or disconnect the appliance. With any luck, it's just a heater that you unplug and life is good and we're good and we just let it cool down. If not, if we've got a hot part of the wall, a hot outlet, a hot switch, something like that, we'll shut the breaker off at the panel that corresponds to that room if we can find it. Otherwise, we shut the whole house down because this could turn into an electrical fire. Let it cool. Hang out for a little while. See if that heat decreases. What does the temperature say on the thermal camera? Is it dissipating? Were we effective in doing that? Or is there actual combustion that's spreading beyond that individual electrical component? If there is combustion, consider using whichever extinguisher is appropriate for whatever's burning. You have disconnected the power, so you should be able to use a Class A extinguisher. That should work just fine. Otherwise, just use that ABC, and there's no risk in using that ABC. It's just more of a pain to clean up and recharge. So smell of sewage. First and foremost, sweep for the hazardous gases using the 4-gas. You start to get strange concentrations of hydrogen sulfide, anything else like that. We're going to treat this as a more serious issue. But otherwise, if it's just a smell, we'll run water through sinks, showers, toilets, things like that. Anything with a drain, especially look for floor drains in the bathrooms or in utility spaces or in the garage. Those floor drains are often the ones that dry out first because there's not a lot of water that gets run through them. Throw a few gallons in, run it through. That should refill the trap, seal off the smell. Consider ventilating a little bit, seeing if it goes away. And if it doesn't go away, and you can't find any significant hazardous concentration of gases using that 4-gas, have them call a plumber and see what we can do to investigate it. Because there's no real threat, no real hazard at that point. It's just a nuisance and something that the homeowner wants to take care of. Finally, looking at chemical issues. Minor household chemicals. Hey, someone was cleaning with bleach and it smells and no one likes it. Open the windows. Simple action to take care of it. If it's more than just I was using bleach to clean something and now things smell like bleach, don the SCBA, mask on, etc. Make sure you have nitrile gloves under those structure gloves if you can. Those will do an acceptable job taking care of any potential chemical hazard that could come into your, that could splash. Then look for that cause. What happened? Was someone mixing something? Okay. We'll find that, and if it's not posing a real significant hazard, it's not actively reacting, but it still smells and is the source, take it out of the structure real carefully, leave it outside, and we'll figure out a hazmat solution after that. But we're mitigating the initial threat. So significant chemical hazard is something actively still reacting by the time the fire department gets there. Are they messing around with things that aren't household chemicals? Or they look like commercial chemicals in weird containers? Anything that's really, really serious, weird, any kind of significant concern, spidey senses are tripped, not a good time. Then we'll take action, assuming that this is a more significant chemical issue and a real hazmat incident. Retreat from the structure, everybody out, set up a perimeter, and start a hazmat response. Get them moving, get this started, and we'll go down that route and take this investigation seriously. And with that, those are the basics of the interior odor investigation call. Not a super common call, but at the same time, it's not that uncommon. So it's something we should be prepared for and be capable of mitigating, at least to the best of our abilities for those basic incidents until someone inadvertently mixed up some really serious chemicals in their garage. With that, please feel free, leave questions, comments, discussion in the comments below, and we'll see you on the next training video.